major Allied states had its own version of Operation Paperclip, where the United States sponsored the removal of Nazi scientists to the U.S., even in cases where they had strong pro-Nazi records, thereby violating U.S. immigration laws. These efforts of recruiting Nazi scientists were distinguished by the continuation of many Nazi-sponsored projects in the United States and Soviet Union. The expatriation of former Nazi scientists was particularly important in a number of fields where the Nazis used slave labor and/or unwilling human subjects in testing and developing extraterrestrial-inspired technologies. The restrictions on such experiments in the United States and other democratic nations meant that these Nazi scientists had a wealth of experience that could not be easily replicated in the U.S. and elsewhere. Areas in particular which were of interest to the Western nations aware of the alien presence were genetic and mind-controlled experiments aimed at optimizing human performance in extreme conditions. These experiments were secretly continued in the United States and other former Allied states with the purpose of bioengineering super soldiers who could display the kind of genetic and mental qualities for extremely high military performance in outer space. The testimonies of former participants in these experiments suggested that many of these former Nazi-sponsored genetic and mind control programs were indeed used for producing super soldiers. Other areas of experimentation involve psychometric weapon development and experiments working with time-dimensional travel. A number of participants in these highly secret projects, sponsored by intelligence and military branches of the government, have come forward to give testimony of these projects. Preston Nichols claims to have been a former director of one of these projects and has testified to the use of children, the homeless, and other unwilling human subjects in continuing these highly secret experiments. Over the years, the Montauk researchers perfected their mind control techniques and continued to delve further into the far reaches of human potential. By developing the psychic abilities of different personnel, it eventually got to the point where a psychic's thought could be amplified with hardware, and illusions could be manifested both subjectively and objectively. This included the virtual creation of matter. All of this was unparalleled in the history of what we call ordinary human experience. But the people who ran the Montauk Project were not about to stop. They would reach even further into the realm of the extraordinary. Once it was discovered that a psychic could manifest matter, it was observed that it could appear at different times depending on what the psychic was thinking. Thus, what would happen if a psychic thought of a book but thought of it appearing yesterday? It was this line of thinking and experimentation which led to the idea that one could bend time itself. After years of research, time portals were opened with massive and outrageous experiments being conducted. The fourth major policy adopted for globally managing alien affairs was that all alien artifacts found around the planet would be brought under the control of one or more of the victorious powers of the United States, Britain, the Soviet Union, and France. This meant that the post-war division of the globe into different spheres of influence agreed to at Yalta meant that most, if not all, alien technology would eventually find its way into the clandestine military programs of the U.S., Britain, the Soviet Union, and France, or at least be monitored by these major states. This fundamental principle of globally managing alien affairs was particularly important in those parts of the planet where ancient civilizations existed and where alien artifacts were likely to be hidden in inaccessible or yet to be discovered areas. Regions such as Tibet, Egypt, Iraq, Afghanistan, Indonesia, South and Central America, and elsewhere were all highly valued assets due to the potential alien artifacts possibly located in these countries and regions. The global cooperation between the U.S. and the Soviet Union and other permanent members of the UN Security Council members in responding to the alien presence and gaining access to alien artifacts yielded to intense strategic cooperation for control of these territories and their hidden treasures. The Cold War ideological conflict masked the very real struggle for each major state to maximize its power in terms of the technological breakthrough alien artifacts would provide. There is evidence that the invasion and takeover of Iraq is but the latest example of a regional military conflict whose ultimate prize is alien artifacts that would impact on the technological programs of the major states managing alien affairs. The split between NATO members France and Germany, with the United States and Britain over the legitimacy and timing of the military intervention in Iraq, suggested that a fundamental realignment in managing alien affairs had occurred with France and Germany, siding with Russia and even China in wanting to restrain the United States. This suggested that the post-Second World War cooperation for managing alien affairs was under severe strain and that very real tensions lay underneath the polite language of international diplomacy. The fifth major policy adopted for globally managing alien technology and the alien presence was that the major powers would cooperate in responding to the challenge posed by both the remnants of Nazi Germany and their hidden military bases in Antarctica and South America, and to one or more alien races that had continued to assist the Nazi elites. This cooperation by the major powers was marked by agreements to not disclose this information to their respective general publics and most elected political officials. What surely most troubled Allied officials was the success of the Nazi elites to develop fully operational saucer craft that were propelled by anti-gravity generators and navigational systems that still had not been successfully developed by the United States or Soviet Union. This Nazi success occurred well before the Allied states were able to develop their own fleets of saucer ships. According to Colonel Steve Wilson, the first successful U.S. anti-gravity flight took place on July 18, 1971 at S4 Dreamland, also known as Area 51, wherein light-bending capabilities were also demonstrated to obtain total invisibilities. A number of military whistleblowers suggest that the United States currently has a fleet of alien reverse-engineered ships with anti-gravity propulsion system, and that manned flights to the Moon and even Mars are regular occurrences by the clandestine organizations developing and using such technologies. The chief legacy of the Nazi-alien connection is that Nazi enclaves continue to influence a key region of the planet, namely South America, leading to numerous political and economic crises in that continent, which continues to seriously impact on the lives of South American citizens. Furthermore, there are claims by a number of researchers that Nazism continues to covertly influence government policy at the highest level in countries such as the United States, Russia, and to a lesser extent, Britain and France, through the Nazi scientists and intelligence officials brought into those countries after the Second World War. These former Nazi scientists and officials assume prominent leadership positions in the clandestine programs to develop alien-inspired technologies, and thus become Trojan horses for Nazi principles and beliefs, both in government and corporations that fulfill numerous contracts that service the military and intelligent communities in the United States. This is especially the case in projects that involve mind control and genetic experiments that utilize alien-inspired technologies for a variety of purposes There is evidence that Nazi infiltration through the Trojan horse of former Nazi scientists into the military-industrial complexes that oversee alien affairs is so significant as to constitute a direct threat to democracy and liberty in the United States and other major powers. There is a need for full disclosure of alien affairs in general in order to make it possible for humanity to make the transition to the reality of extraterrestrial life and the political issues that arise with dealing with alien affairs.